"You do not speak our tongue," he stated. It wasn't a question. May, her heart in her throat, shook her head. He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving her face. "You are not from the northern tribes. Their women are pale and golden. You are not from the southern deserts. Their skin is darker." He tilted his head, a scholar examining a rare text. "Your garment on the road." The craftsmanship was strange. The fastenings. "I have never seen their like." He began to pace a slow circle around her. She stood rigid, feeling like a specimen. "The merchants from the east bring silks, but not like that. The weavers of the west make fine wool, but not cut so." He searched for a word. So recklessly he completed his circle and stopped in front of her again. His gaze was unwavering. "And your hair?" He fell silent, just looking at it. He didn't reach out to touch, but his attention was a physical touch in itself. It is not the color of a fox, nor of wine. It is both. It is like silk. He took another step, now close enough that she could smell the scent of him, sage and clean sweat and sun-warmed stone. It does not obey. It has no order. It is willful. He was not just describing her hair. He was describing her. He saw the defiance in its cut, the modernity in its style. He was intuiting her entire world from this one bizarre detail. "Who are you?" he asked, and for the first time there was a note in his voice that was not command, not cold analysis, but genuine, profound wonder. "Where does a woman with hair like captured snow come from?" This was the beginning of his obsession. It was not merely aesthetic, it was intellectual. He was a conqueror, a man who had mapped known lands and subjugated known peoples. Her existence was an unsolvable equation, a border on his map that read, "Here there be monsters," and he was determined to chart it. He began to visit her daily. He brought a scribe with him, a thin man who sat in the corner with a wax tablet, recording everything. The emperor would point to objects, a cup, a sandal, the window, and say their names. He waited, watching her mouth until she repeated them. He was teaching her. He brought her things, a piece of fruit he called a malum, a scroll, a feather from a bird of paradise. He watched her reactions, her ignorance, her occasional dawning understanding. He was piecing her together, and she began to piece him together too. His name was Shin. He was Emperor Shin Choi. He was sharp, frighteningly intelligent, and possessed of a boundless, insatiable curiosity that her sudden appearance had tapped into. He was used to being the most powerful, the most knowledgeable person in any room. Her existence was the first true mystery he had encountered in years. The court, of course, was buzzing. Whispers slithered through the marbled halls like snakes. She was a witch, a demon summoned from the underworld. Her strange hair a sign of her fiendish nature. She was a barbarian princess, sent to bewitch the emperor with her foreign magic. She was a Vestal virgin who had broken her vows and been struck mad by the gods, her hair shorn in punishment, though no one could explain its color. Lin and Cha, once afraid, now regarded her with a kind of awe. They began to tentatively ask questions in their broken, simple way, pointing to things just as the emperor did. "Shui?" Lin would say, holding a water jug. May would nod. "Water." A pidgin language began to form between them. One afternoon, Sheen found her trying to explain the concept of a shower to the two girls, using hand gestures for rain and mimicking scrubbing. He watched from the doorway, unnoticed for a moment, a faint, uncharacteristic smile touching his lips. It was the first time she had seen anything resembling humor on his face. "They think you are describing a very small indoor thunderstorm," he said, entering the room. The girls immediately dropped into deep curtsies, terrified at having been caught in informal chatter with the prisoner. He dismissed them with a wave. When they were gone, he turned to May. "Explain this to me." And so she did as best she could with her growing vocabulary and a lot of gesturing. He listened, rapt, his brow furrowed in concentration. He asked precise, practical questions about plumbing, about water pressure, about drainage. He wasn't just humoring her. He was engineering in his mind. The next day, a team of craftsmen appeared at her door. The emperor was with them. He had diagrams scratched onto a clay tablet. "The rain," he said, pointing upward. "How does it fall inside? From where?" Without thinking, Lady took the stylus from him. She ignored the gasps of the craftsmen at her audacity. She sketched a crude tank, a pipe, a nozzle with holes. "The water is stored here," she said slowly in his language. "It comes down. Here." Shin took the tablet back, his fingers brushing against hers. A jolt, sharp and unexpected, passed between them. He looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. The dynamic in the room shifted. He was no longer just the emperor and she the puzzle. For a heartbeat, they were just a man and a woman, connected by a shared, impossible moment of collaboration. He looked back at the diagram, his voice slightly husky. "And how does the water get to the tank?" "A pump," she said, the English word slipping out. She scrambled for an alternative. A machine. To push the water up." He stared at her, and she saw the realization dawn in his eyes, fuller and more terrifying than any before. It wasn't just that she was from a strange land. Her knowledge itself was alien. It was a technology, a way of thinking, that was centuries ahead of his own. The mystery of her deepened exponentially. That night, he did not leave. He dismissed the craftsman and sat on the chair, watching the sunset paint her room in shades of orange and purple. "A machine to push water," he murmured more to himself than to her. "Your world must be a place of wonders." "It is," she whispered, her voice thick with homesickness and a strange, burgeoning emotion she dared not name. He looked at her then, truly looked at her, not as an emperor to a subject, nor a scholar to a specimen, but as a man to a woman. He saw the intelligence in her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, the vulnerability she tried to hide. He saw the person behind the mesmerizing hair. "Tell me," he said, his voice soft, an invitation, not a command. "Tell me of your wonders." And so, under the emerging stars of an ancient sky, May began to talk. She told him of cities that touched the clouds, of carriages that moved without horses, of lights that burned without flame. She spoke of a world where knowledge was not hoarded by scribes, but available to all. Where women could choose their paths, where people could speak their minds without fear of an emperor's wrath. He listened, his expression unreadable, his mind racing to comprehend the scope of it all. He didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss her claims as madness. He simply absorbed. When she finished, the room was dark, save for the light of a single oil lamp. The silence between them was no longer empty, but filled with the enormity of what she had revealed. Shin rose and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the bolt, his broad shoulders outlined in the lamplight. He did not turn around. "My world must seem very small to you," he said, his voice low. "No," May answered, surprising herself with her honesty. "It seems very large and very real." He left then and she was alone, but the room felt different. The gilded cage felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. The thread of destiny, first caught on a strand of her hair, was now weaving itself around her heart and around his, binding them together across an impossible divide. The emperor's intrigue had blossomed into something far more dangerous and far more beautiful. A connection that defied all logic, a romance written against the flow of time itself. The change was subtle at first, a quiet ripple in the deep, still waters of the empire. It began in the palace, a place where even the smallest shift in current was noticed and analyzed with paranoid intensity. The emperor's chief engineer, a brilliant and perpetually harried man named Chan, was summoned to the imperial chambers. He arrived expecting to discuss aqueducts or siege engines. Instead, he found his ruler standing beside the mysterious, white-haired woman, who was sketching on a clay tablet with a focused intensity. "Chan," Shin said, his voice carrying a note of excitement as Chan hadn't heard in years. "We require a system. Water must be raised to a tank here." He pointed to a spot on the crude drawing, "and then fall through a perforated vessel, here, to create a constant, gentle rain for bathing." Chan blinked, his mind struggling to parse the request. "My lord, the aqueducts deliver water to the fountains and the baths, through gravity alone. To lift it higher, we would need a pump," May said softly, the foreign word now a part of their shared vocabulary. She mimed the action of a piston. "A machine." To push, Shin looked at her, and Chan saw it. A look not of ownership or mere fascination, but of partnership, of shared thought. It was more shocking than the bizarre engineering request. Weeks later, a prototype was built. It was clumsy, made of wood and bronze, and it groaned alarmingly, but it worked. Water pumped into an elevated tank in the royal suite and could be released through a valve. It wasn't a modern shower, but it was a revolution. The whispers in the court changed tone. The witch was now a seer. The demon became an oracle. This was the ripple effect. It wasn't just the shower. It was the ideas. She described the concept of a 4-field crop rotation to an intrigued agricultural minister, baffling him with her knowledge of nitrogen-fixing plants that didn't yet exist in their part of the world. She once, in frustration at the dim lighting, described the principle of a simple generator and magnetism to Shin, who stayed up all night questioning her, his eyes alight with a fire she'd never seen. He couldn't build one, but the seed of the idea that invisible forces could be harnessed was planted in the mind of the most powerful man in the known world. The timeline was unraveling, thread by thread, and May felt a crushing weight of responsibility. What if she changed too much? What if her mere presence, her simple suggestions, erased the future she came from? Would she simply cease to exist? Would the world she knew ever be? These fears became the shadow to their growing love. Their relationship was a secret rebellion conducted in sun-drenched rooms and moonlit gardens. He was the emperor, bound by tradition, expectation, and the desperate need for a legitimate heir from a woman of noble birth. She was a woman out of time, with no family, no name, and ideas that threatened the very foundation of his world. Their challenges were immense. The court, led by the severe advisor, Senator Shun, watched them with growing alarm. Shin's fascination with her was an open secret, and it was seen as a dangerous distraction. "He listens to her more than his counsel," Shun hissed to his allies. "She speaks of things that are not the business of women, let alone a foreign captive." One evening, as they walked through the private imperial gardens, Shin stopped and held her face in his hands. The scent of night-blooming jasmine was heavy in the air. "They want me to send you away," he said, his voice rough with an emotion that was neither command nor curiosity, but fear. "They say you are a risk, that you cloud my judgment." "Maybe I do," May whispered, her heart breaking. "Maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe my being here is a mistake that will break the world. You're the first thing in my life that has ever felt entirely right," he countered, his thumb stroking her cheek. "What is an empire if it is built without wonder? What is a future if it has no place for you in it?" He was choosing her, against all reason, against history, against the deafening roar of expectation. He was choosing the woman from the future. The potential paradoxes loomed. Could they have a future? He would age. Would she, in this time? If she stayed, would she ever see her own time again? And if she did, would he be nothing but a footnote in a history book she had irrevocably altered? The questions were unanswerable. They lived with them, their love a fragile, beautiful thing built on the precipice of a temporal cliff. The climax came during a public address from the throne room. Shin was to announce a new public works project inspired by May's descriptions of civic plumbing. A plan for cleaner public latrines and fresh water access in the city's poorest districts. It was a good idea, a humane idea, but it was her idea. As he spoke, his eyes found hers where she stood, veiled in a shadowed alcove. He didn't just announce the plan. He spoke of its purpose, of the value of every citizen's health, of an empire that cared for its people. It was a modern sentiment, spoken with ancient conviction. Senator Chan stepped forward, his face a mask of fury. "My emperor!" he cried, his voice echoing in the hall. "These are not your words. This is not regal thought. This is the influence of the foreign sorceress. She weaves her spells around you, poisoning your mind with her strange, unnatural notions." The court fell deathly silent. All eyes turned to the shadowed alcove. Shin rose from his throne. The air crackled with his authority. "You speak of what you do not understand, Chan," he said, his voice low but carrying to every corner of the vast room. "You call it poison. I call it progress. You call her a sorceress. I call her—" He paused, and in that pause, he didn't just defy his court. He defied history itself. "I call her my heart." The gasps were audible. He had not just acknowledged her. He had claimed her, publicly and personally, in that moment. May understood. The ripple effect wasn't just about pumps and crop rotation. The true change, the timeless legacy, was him. She had not come to change the empire with modern ideas. She had come to change the emperor with a modern heart. Her legacy would not be a technology stolen from the future, but a man made more compassionate, more curious, more human by a love that transcended time. The story doesn't end with a returned time machine or a vanishing act. It ends with a choice. Later, in their chambers, Shin held her tightly. "The path will not be easy," he murmured into her hair. "They will fight me every step. I know," she said. "I cannot make you empress. The Senate would never allow it." "I don't need a title," she replied. "I just need you." He pulled back to look at her. "And your world? Your time?" May looked around the room at the clumsy shower mechanism, at the clay tablets filled with their shared writing, at the face of the man who had looked at her wild, anachronistic hair and seen not a monster, but a kindred spirit. "This is my world now," she said, and for the first time, she believed it. She had chosen him, just as he had chosen her. Destiny had provided the connection, but individual choice had sealed it. Their love story became the empire's most guarded secret and its most enduring legend. The emperor did not have a reigning empress, but he was never alone. He ruled for decades, and his reign was marked by a surprising streak of innovation and compassion that historians would later call anomalously progressive. He had a trusted, unofficial advisor, a woman with hair like captured snow, whose origins were never documented, but whose influence was woven into the very fabric of his legacy. They built a life, not in the future or the past, but in their own present. A new timeline born from an unexpected connection. It was a testament to the fact that some bonds are fated, regardless of era or circumstance. That a single unique thread, pulled through the loom of time, can change the pattern of everything, creating a new design. One of love, choice, and a legacy that truly was timeless. What do you think? Could a love like this truly reshape history? Would you choose a life in the past for a destined connection? Share your own favorite time travel romance theories or how you think their story continues in this new, altered timeline.